Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's your favorite paranormal investigator, Tim Sudano here. This episode is from 2023. It was the Thanksgiving special and will be the standing Thanksgiving special until I record a new one with Charlene. Charlene and I go way back a little bit. She is an all-around talent. She's a Renaissance woman, really. And when I think about what she's accomplished at this stage of her life, which is comparatively early, um, I think of her overall as not only a Renaissance woman, but I guess a healer would be the best way to describe her. Between her acting, her writing, her music, she's always sought to make people feel better. And that is beyond what any one artist typically aims for. For Charlene, I truly believe it is her goal. And she's more focused on that goal more than ever. As she'll say in this interview, she is pursuing her doctorate in the physics of audio, which is remarkable. So, I, without further ado, here's Charleene Closshey. Enjoy. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Paranormal Insight. I'm your host, Tim Sudano. Tonight, we're going to discuss sound. Not only the pleasure it gives us in music, but the ability to heal. Tonight's guest is Charleene Closshey. Charlene, welcome to the show.
It's good to be here. Good to see you, Tim.
Good to see you as well. Charlene and I go back a little ways. We met through it was an attempt at doing a promo, if I remember correctly. God, it's been so darn long ago.
So many years. Oh, it wasn't just like last week.
It feels like it, doesn't it?
No, it does.
I know. It feels like it. But yeah, she helped me out tremendously on my first foray into real film. We shot a little promo in LA and all that fun stuff.
Oh, and I'm so excited too, Tim, all the wonderful stuff that you're doing as well. And I couldn't be more thrilled to be here with all of your awesome friends and guests. So
yeah. Woohoo. But let's talk about your what got you here. You started out in music, is that correct?
Yeah, I actually literally was born playing music. When I was 2, my parents put me in piano lessons because
no kidding, when you were 2?
No, I was 2. I would crawl to the piano and I'd pull myself up on the leg spindle and I'd start tapping, and they're like, oh, well, maybe we should pursue that. And so I learned to read music before I could read words. And so music has always been my understanding of the world, and played multiple instruments. My first career, I was actually a professional violinist even before I met you. And
okay, I remember you mentioning something about being a concert musician.
Yeah.
Did I get that right?
100%. So I
Okay.
played in symphonies, I played in pop settings, I played in small ensembles, I played solo work, all around the world. Played with some really cool people, everybody from Frank Sinatra Jr. to Charlie Daniels. So
Charlie Daniels. Oh my gosh.
What a great dude.
Yeah, really? Oh, cool.
Yeah.
That's so neat.
Such a kind man. So
Now,
music
was
has
that
always
in
been
studio or on stage? Just so
on stage. Yeah,
good
on
for
stage.
you.
He would there were multiple times, actually multiple concerts, where he would bring me out and we would dual fiddle with Devil Went Down to Georgia.
I love my favorite song of his. Yeah,
I know,
yeah.
it's so great. And it was so much fun, because I was from this very classical, staunch sort of, stuffy sort of world. And then here I come and I'm like, yeah, going to town with him. But his heart was so pure and so beautiful. And again, just reinforcing that, the kindness that we show always comes back to us.
Yes.
And people loved him. And I think it was because he was such a kind man too. So Interesting. But yeah, music is has always been my life. And you know, I've since you and I have connected, I've done multiple films, and
Yeah.
um
She is a
I was on.
fantastic actress, ladies and gentlemen, just so you all
Oh,
know that.
you're very kind. You're very
I'm
kind.
very honest. You're a very good actress.
I'll give you your quarter later. No, just kidding. Um,
Make it out
um,
too.
yeah, there you go.
I'm
Exactly.
teasing.
Sudano.
It's right on the screen.
Exactly. Oh, perfect. Perfect. Make note.
I'm
Make note.
teasing. I'm teasing.
Um, so I've done films. I had a great time doing Broadway. I was in the show Once, which is a Tony Award winning musical. I was worked with their Broadway cast. I was also on their national tour for a while. And but then, when COVID started coming around, right before COVID happened, I started sort of having this inkling inside of, are you
Something was
really,
wrong.
well, something, am I pursuing exactly? Am I where I need to be?
No.
And it's interesting that time after time after time again in my life, when I do one of two things, I either show up and I say yes, or I really listen to that still small voice inside and realize I'm trying to tell myself something, that the information comes in really powerful and profound ways, usually before I even knew I needed it.
Oh,
And
interesting.
yeah, and so right before COVID, we started having this shift. We actually, that December, we released it was our first Billboard Top 40 hit. It's on radio. It was on
Yeah.
Hot AC on Christmas Day. It actually was, our radio single was sitting next to Lady Gaga
Oh,
in the
wow.
ratings. Yeah,
All
just really
right.
crazy. And she didn't even have the song of hers. I don't remember which one it was, but it wasn't even a Christmas song. And ours was "I Heard the Bells on Christmas Day."
Oh,
And
I love that song. I did hear that
yeah,
take. Yeah, that was excellent.
yeah. Thank you. Yeah. So, it's kind of one of those things of just like listen to where you need to be. So we'd already started shifting back towards the music, and then after COVID, really fell back into that. Um, I should say dove headfirst back into that, and I'm really glad we did, because it's landed me where we are in this moment, which is really focusing on understanding the depth and the fullness of the potential, not only of just sounds, but of frequency and vibration. So I'm actually working on my doctorate in this now, a
Are
doctorate
you
in natural
really?
medicine.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
studying.
fantastic.
Yeah, so studying frequency, and it's amazing how we're using it. It's just like the tip of the iceberg to which frequency is being used, both from a scientific, but then also from a truly holistic perspective.
Right.
Um, you know, Einstein said future medicine is the medicine of frequencies. And even before that, Pythagoras said everything in the future will be treated through sound. And we're
That's
starting.
interesting. You mentioned that because in my research on this, I actually discovered that the ancients were actually using sound frequency quite a bit for to
Mhm.
heal a lot of things. I mean, they couldn't make all the sounds, but they were using bowls like you use, like in the background
Mhm.
there and next to you.
Yeah.
And they were using ancient India, absolutely. They even have
Mhm.
the sounds, the mandalas.
Yeah.
Mandalas, did I
Yes.
say that correctly?
Yeah. So
That's
in
actually the picture of the sound.
exactly, exactly. So what's called a yantra is actually the visual representation of, in India, they used to call it a mantra or a specific sound. Well,
Oh,
today we know that as cymatics, that we
yes.
can generate a specific tone and stimulate sand or water in such a way that it replicates the picture, the
Right.
image of the sound.
And they knew that way back then.
How do you think they moved all these crazy pyramid stones?
You know,
Let's
it's
think about
funny
that
you
one.
mentioned that too. They were actually you I heard this was it Zacharias Stitchin? I can't
Mhm.
recall. It may be Zacharias Stitchin. He theorized that they actually had a method of I'm going to lose the word now that I need it the most.
Yeah.
Uh,
But of
that
levitating the stones.
it's a type of conduction. Yeah, superconduction.
Okay.
Yeah, they use
Yeah.
superconduction to get them up, to get those big stones up the hill.
Well,
There's
we know
also,
that's,
mhm,
yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Sorry.
Oh, I was going to say there's a secondary theory that they may have chopped things out of the thing, but they used it as a mortar and sent that up to the thing and then made the bricks there on site.
Interesting.
But they never actually found that to be true since they had the big blocks half carved out in the quarries. So,
Exactly.
but uh,
Exactly.
but
And
yeah, superconduction, interesting.
sound actually has anti-gravity
Yeah, it
properties, and
does. It
you've seen
does.
it firsthand. I mean, and that cymatics touches on that briefly. There's actually there was a demonstration recently a friend of ours did. He's an acoustic physicist, John Stewart Reed, and he was showing firsthand, if you want to see, you know, how powerful sound is, watch it levitate these items off of this particular platform. So
Yeah, it's amazing.
there's it's really incredible what sound can do, and it makes sense because we're all vibration. You're vibration.
Yeah,
I'm vibration. Your chair is vibration.
yeah. You're
Makes you
talking
wonder.
about atomic vibration in this case,
Exactly.
or subatomic vibration, I guess.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
everything. I mean, there was a scientist who showed that they perceive that the atom disappears, and that's the full atom. So proton, neutron, and electron disappears and reappears within each cell of our body. 10 to the 21st time. That's 10 with 21 zeros
Oh
behind
my
it
gosh.
times
Yeah,
per second. So,
it's
and
amazing.
hence, yeah, and hence
Mm.
we never perceive it, and yet it's there.
Yeah, and yet it happens. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I love science. When I was at NASA a gazillion years ago, way before I got into film and all the rest of it, one of the things I saw was similar to what you just described. There was a sound levitation idea where they used an acoustic, regular old speaker. It was a subwoofer. It was a big one. It was like
Mhm.
21 inches or something. And
Mhm.
they said, bah, and they hit the thing, and this thing had a cinder block on top of it, levitated it like it was nothing. And
100%.
it was amazing. They used a super low frequency, and they all had to wear earmuffs because if they heard it, apparently it would affect their bowels or something like that.
Yeah.
But it was
Yeah. A
amazing.
lot of the lower frequencies really do have strong correlations to our organs in the body and all of our body on a cellular level. Most of and if you find the right range, there's actually tremendous healing benefits that come with some of these lower frequencies that we know that some tones will actually generate, like 58 hertz will actually generate it will have a stimulating, like a balancing and stimulating effect within the system. So you'll start to feel more energized. 36 hertz actually begins to take away pain. It begins to interject into that pain spasm pain cycle, and you can actually break that cycle because the frequency kind of interjects itself into that looping pattern. So really fascinating stuff.
That's amazing. We kind of jumped ahead to my fourth question, but I'll it's okay there. But that's all right. Well, let's handle it since we're talking about it.
Sure.
When one is taking in these sounds, listening to it, you saw my microphone, listening to it through
There
your
was.
ears. Oh no, he's actually mic'd. It's not enough to listen to it through your ears, is it? Or do you have to be in front of a 3-foot speaker and
Yeah, it's a really great question, and it depends on what it is that you're looking to stimulate or what type of response you're trying to elicit.
okay,
So if you are really going for a strong healing effect, usually a full body, fully systemic introduction of sound into the space is the most efficacious. So it's going to work the best.
right.
And if you, so there's chairs, there's beds, there's all types of contraptions. There's half chairs that you can lean back on, that actually you can connect different frequencies into and experience the sound that way. There are even more simply, say you're out and it's you can't really carry your vibrating bed with you.
Yeah.
um Not as portable right now as you'd like for it to be. Even the use of headphones, but certain high quality headphones that project down into those really low frequency range. And where I'm really talking about is down to like 4, 5, 6 hertz.
Oh,
And why I say
wow.
that, yeah, in those really lower
Is
ranges.
that,
So
I'm sorry to interrupt you, is that infrasound?
well, not technically, because it's lower than technically humans will hear down to. Most people hear down to about 20 hertz.
Okay.
Some of us will hear down to even into 16, and then upwards into 20,000 hertz. And then beyond that's kind of like what our dogs hear. Um, but whenever we're that low, we can still feel the vibration of sound. The sound still registers, which is why you can have rumbling in the earth and you may not feel the sound, but you hear it.
Right.
Interesting side note, cobras in India are used to predict weather patterns, especially earthquake phenomenon on the other side of the globe, because they feel the sensations. Their whole body is a listening apparatus. They're basically a giant ear. And so they actually hear the ground, but they, not just the ground underneath them, they hear the entire sphere upon which they travel. It's amazing.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah. So when you're getting down into these really low
Hmm.
4, 5, 6 hertz, you have to have really good headphones. Jumping back to headphones,
Yeah.
and the headphones that we use all the time. And excuse me, interestingly enough, pardon me,
That's all right.
I've used these in the studio for gosh, I don't know how long, but they're the Bear Dynamic DT 77 Pro. David Thomas. There you go. DT 77 Pro. And you can get them for like $150 on Amazon. It's not a steep entry fee by any stretch. And
That's
then,
pretty good.
yeah, and you'll actually, they resonate down to, I think it's 5 hertz, if I recall correctly. And then if you wanted to resonate down into 4 hertz, which might be a little excess, I think the next headphones that really do that add a zero to the end of that price, which is fine if that's where you want to go. But those headphones are really effective for stimulating the vagus nerve. And why they do that is that, yeah, if you've got that full headphone cupped over your ear, you're actually generating vibration to the tragus, that tiny little flap of skin on the outside of your ear.
Gotcha.
And, yep. And that first place that tragus goes is straight inside your brain and it hits the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is the 10th cranial nerve. It's the longest running nerve throughout our body.
Okay.
They call it vagus. It actually means wandering in Latin. So this little nerve wanders around
Not
and
Las
touches
Vegas.
all. Yeah, not Las Vegas. No, no, no. But this guy touches all your major organ systems, and by
Okay.
doing so, it has a very calming and in some ways, it will calm the body. It also begin to re-energize cells that had been out of alignment. So a vagal toning is a really powerful thing. If you want to look at the research, just Google vagal toning. You'll see there's
Okay.
yeah, a ton of really powerful work that's backing all of that up. And you can stimulate the vagus nerve just through sound.
And that is whole body effective. Is that correct?
It will have a whole body effect. Yeah, it is not nearly as immediately impacting as, for instance, having a full body of laying on a full speaker. That's a totally different phenomenon.
Okay.
Now you're actually innervating a system that connects to many.
Okay. So if you're on a speaker bed, for example,
Mm-hmm.
or couch or whatever it is,
Mm-hmm.
are you setting up different tones that come through each speaker, or are you rotating through these tones, or?
So a lot of that would be the proprietary science of whatever company you're working with.
Okay.
And there's different research that's kind of indicating different things regarding this topic. So a lot of times it's not just a single frequency that will be coming through. Most of the times they're rolling through a variety of tones and pitches. And if you think about it this way, if we were to equate frequency into music, for every tone or note or pitch, like one key on the piano, you're actually going to have a range of frequency that connects to that pitch, to that tone, that note. So, for instance, the great, I'm sure everybody's heard about this, 440 versus 432. Oh, what music is better for us to listen to?
Right. I have heard
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And so the thing is that we're actually still talking about the same note. I mean, and we're talking about A. It's the same note that a violinist would tune if they're going to tune an orchestra.
Right.
The conductor will be like, "Hey, concertmaster, play an A." And this is the tone that will generate congruency throughout the whole orchestra. But I mean, that ranges up to like 450 plus and down into as low as like gosh, depending on the rest of the structure, it's like low 400s. I mean, so
Oh,
you
okay.
have a range. So when we're connecting to specific frequency, we also kind of have range of what those frequencies directly connect to physically in our system.
Okay.
It's not quite as broad. Because if you think about it, the higher frequencies, the really fast moving waves, really fast moving pitches,
Sure.
lower frequencies, they move a lot slower.
Right.
Exactly. So there's different amounts that each of these waves will touch and then where they affect in our physical bodies.
So with regard to duration,
Mm.
what is an ideal duration for, let's say we're doing the
The vagal toning.
vagal
Vagal,
tone.
yeah. Yeah, vagal toning.
So you're doing a vagal toning and you do it for 5 minutes and it's going to last you 24 hours, 48 hours. How does that work?
Oh, wouldn't that be great if we had a magic pill?
I don't know.
So,
I'm asking.
yeah, yeah, no, it's a great question and applicable as well, because the interesting thing is that your body has its own unique resonance, and that resonance is a little different than my body.
Right.
And that
Okay.
also
That was
makes
my next
sense.
question, actually.
Yeah. So, I mean,
Okay.
and that's how we can walk into a room and we pick up a vibe and we're like, ooh, I'm really digging this vibe. Let's hang. Or like,
Right.
no, no, no. Peace out.
Yeah. Right.
Um, because we're not in congruency, even on a cellular level. A lot of times that's how people can perceive truth. You lying to me?
Yep.
Like, I
That's
mean,
true.
you can feel it. You can
Yeah.
actually feel the
Yeah.
subtle shift.
That's true.
So when it comes to using, for instance, like the vagal toning, it's a great example. Some studies will show at least 10 minutes or 12 minutes. We actually have a friend of ours, John Stewart Reed, I mentioned him before, but he had done some research with a fellow scientist, and they had discovered that by projecting certain of these lower tones into dishes of red blood cells, so it was an in vitro experiment,
Mm.
that they could re-enliven once either stagnant or dead red blood cells just by exposing them to these certain frequencies for at least 20 minutes. And they
Wow.
did it, they were in a Faraday cage. I mean, it was a very beautifully conducted scientific experiment. And so generally, when it comes to vagal toning, we tend to recommend at least 20 minutes. You'll know whenever you've had enough. And for some, for me, some days I'm kind of like 10 minutes, I'm good. Yeah, peace out, we're done.
Okay.
But
Gotcha.
then other days, it's nice to go a little bit longer. But again, it's a function of where my physical body is and is
Hmm.
at any given time. So you always kind of have to follow your own
I mean,
instincts.
geographically located as well?
Well, sometimes geographic location can come into it, but that's mostly because then how I'm resonating at that place.
Okay. Gotcha.
And every space feels different. I mean, New York feels totally different than LA.
That's
Feels
true.
totally different from Chicago. Feels totally different from Vancouver.
Yeah.
It's totally different from Minneapolis. So, there are a lot of factors that come into play. So, which is why I think there's not just a single one size fits all.
Yeah,
But
okay. That was my next question, actually.
yeah,
And you answered it. Thank you.
woohoo!
So
Like I'm psychic.
tell me about your psychic experiences. No, just
Where to
we're gonna go
begin?
completely off topic. Let's see.
I knew you were going
So
to ask that. Sorry. Sorry, bad joke.
that's
We're all a
great.
little bit psychic. We're
Yes.
psycho,
Yeah, we were
depending
talking
on.
about that off the air, and yeah, we are. We are.
I fully
Uh,
believe it.
I do too. I believe we all have that ability to one degree or another. It's just about fostering it and really focusing. If you want to even focus on that, but because
That's it.
some people just really have the gift and they really don't want it, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Well,
So,
like anything, it's always a function of how do we use it for our greatest benefit, our greatest our own greatest expansion at any given time, and that's is incumbent on the individual. And um, if we aren't presented with challenging situations, if we aren't presented with things that push us or expand us, we never grow. So one could argue that there's also an opportunity to always find growth in whatever the subject is, even if it's understanding our own innate abilities.
very well said. Very well said. You are going for your doctorate. Just teasing you. Um, so you, and I don't know if this is specifically what you wanted to pitch or discuss or what have you, but you released an album revolving around the planets,
Yes.
and it was their tonal frequencies, and you gave instructions, I think, in the CD to where find your birth planet according to astrology or something like that. Is
Yeah,
that correct?
so that's correct. So that album aligned a planetary mantra and gong shower. It was this little gem that kind of came out of, actually it was totally birthed out of the desire. My father was very ill at the time, and I'm like, I'm a musician, I'm studying sound, I should be able to figure something out. And so I really started pursuing, well, how can we integrate healing frequencies into music in an innocuous way? So it's not like you're sitting here turning on, you know, YouTube, the 777 hertz for wealth generating vibe, which I mean is great. Have you tried it?
Yeah,
I
I don't know. I haven't. No, I
yeah.
haven't.
But of really integrating some of these very physically healing sounds and vibrations into the space in a way that people, um, it won't hurt you, it will only help you. And if you really connect to it, it can help you a lot. And the album has been so well received. It's amazing to me. And not only from the industry, it's won a ton of really crazy awards. One of the
Awesome.
first awards, thank you. One of the first awards it won, actually, it won in its category, and Hans Zimmer won in his category. Like,
Huh.
so kind of cool.
Right on.
Love all of his film scores.
Yeah,
Amazing on so many
Zimmer makes
levels.
some good music. Yeah.
He does indeed. So not only was it well received in the industry, but also just by the listeners. We've had stories of people sharing how they've used it because it helps them with feelings of anxiety. It helps them with feelings of depression. It helps them whenever they need to re-energize or rebalance. They've come out of really intense days. I actually had a composer friend of mine, very well known. I'll leave him nameless, but
Okay.
very well known composer. But he emailed me. He's like, "Yo, I can't believe this." So very well known classical composer, and he's from LA, and he
And
was
he
doing
said,
sessions.
"Yo." No, I'm
No,
kidding.
well, kind of, yeah. Though
I'm
he would.
teasing. I'm teasing. I'm
Yeah, he
teasing.
would. So he's like, Charlene, oh my God, I just had the longest day, and it was not the best sessions we've ever had. And so he was really dragging. And he said, I came home, I came back to my hotel room, and I knew that we've had the rest of the weekend were just intense sessions in front of me. And I needed to, I needed, I needed.
All right.
And so he put on Aligned. He listened to it, and it's almost 2 hours of music. So he listened to it until 2 a.m. And he said, by the time I was done, I felt amazing. I slept like a baby. I woke
Nice.
up and we had the most incredible sessions the next day, better than we've ever had. And
Wow.
not
It's
not chalking it
amazing.
up to the music, but I'm chalking it up to the intentionality too, through which we can all choose of how we interact with any sort of frequency. See, the trick is that the frequencies are there if we know how to connect to them, but also how to really, at least from a musician standpoint, bring them out in a way that someone can access them. There's so much noise in the world. There's a lot of noise in music too. So when we can get really specific at bringing out the noise, suddenly there's breakthroughs. There was another woman who had reached out and she said, "You're not going to believe this, but after doing a 10-minute session with the music," she said, "I hadn't been able to hear out of one of her ears for, I think, almost a year." She said,
Wow.
"My hearing came back, and I waited a month to reach out because I just wanted to make sure
It's
it's
stuck.
still back." Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
You know, so
wow.
there's
That's
this really
amazing.
powerful, yeah,
That
really
must make
powerful.
you feel amazing to know you put that out there.
You know, it makes me feel very humbled because
Yeah,
it's a reminder that I'm a part of something bigger than I am. It's not about me. This is not.
I
It's
understand.
actually one of
Yeah.
the reasons I'm actually studying, why I'm doing the doctorate, is because I'm trying to figure out how is this happening? How is this that we're actually generating tones meaningfully in a way that people can access them? And that's kind of the, if we can, when we can move from this place of, ooh, it's magic, into a place of, oh, it's science, suddenly
Yes.
that's when we can break that 4-minute mile uh, for all of musicians. I mean, and it's not like that people even now aren't using tones and frequency. So this is fun. You'll like this. There's actually a paranormal frequency that whenever 19 hertz begins to be sounded in a room, and usually it's right below where people can hear, but you
Yeah.
feel it because it's so close, and
Right.
some people can actually hear that low. It feels like there is something paranormal in the room. There is actually
Yep.
a drop, like your physiology, the temperature actually begins to drop. So if the room feels colder, like
Yeah.
it's really interesting. So for instance, there's that tone. There's another tone called the fear frequency that
Yep.
elicits a
I know
point
about
of,
that too. Yeah, go ahead.
exactly, yeah, and it's used all the time in film scores. So
Yes,
if it can be, if we
totally
can use
is.
stuff for yucky, why can't we use stuff for goody?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So
Um,
yeah, so Aligned kind of really connects into all of that, and it's a really beautiful project. So
it was a lot. I did listen to it when it came out. And I landed in Mars, so I listened to Mars first. And Mars didn't resonate with me as much as I expected it to, which was
mm.
interesting.
Well,
Then I
sometimes
listened.
too.
Go ahead.
Well, let me interject in there. Sometimes the places that we have the most resonance feel the most familiar, and thus, oh, I thought I'd have a bigger response. It's already such a huge part of who you are
Okay.
that it just kind of girds you up, as opposed to like takes you into a new space.
Right,
So
right.
interesting. But then what did you listen to after Mars?
It was either Sun. I think he had one called Universe too.
Deep Space.
Deep Space, excuse me. And I
Yeah.
love Deep Space. Man, that made me feel so good.
Yes. Deep Space is one of our favorites. Whenever somebody wants to feel, when when they want to travel out and beyond, when they want to feel the next higher octave of our solar system, um, starting to feel into the higher dimensions, that's a track I suggest for them.
That's amazing.
And
And you also had one called Sun,
yes,
and
yeah, Sun.
I enjoyed Sun a lot too.
Oh, good,
Yeah.
good. Yeah, you're the center of your universe.
I guess so.
Y'all are.
um yeah, but Sun was great. Yeah. You were about to say something, I interrupted you.
Oh, well, yeah, well, the fun thing too about the tracks is that there's a lot of different ways to plug in for people. So if someone really strongly connects into their astrological chart and how they've manifested timing wise in the world, that's a fun place for them to begin. And it's an easy place too for people to dive in. But if you really if you kind of want to start connecting to the wholeness of the universe, based on what's going on at any given moment, check out whatever planets are transiting in the sky at that time. Maybe Mercury's in retrograde, listen to Mercury. Maybe Venus is trining with Jupiter, listen to Venus and Jupiter and see what that brings up for you. um,
Interesting.
you can also do it if you're looking to elicit specific archetypal responses. So Mars, speaking of Mars, Mars connects us to, he's the planet of passion. We know him as the god of
War.
war.
Yeah.
Yeah. But interestingly enough, he's also directly connected to healing, which makes sense.
Yeah, it
If we
does.
want to destroy something, we
Got to
have to
build it
be
back up.
able, exactly, to recultivate.
Right.
As my dad always said, he said, if you want peace, prepare for war. So if you have this space that you're going into, it could be competition, like you're going into a sports competition.
Yeah.
It could be you just need to buck up this energy, increase that the passionate flow of vitality moving through your space. Mars might be a good thing for you to listen to. If you want to float off at night and experience lucid dreaming, or like if that's something that you're working with and towards, and that's part of your spiritual and developmental path, listen to Neptune. Like, so the tracks can also be very prescriptive as well.
That's amazing. I'm
It's
writing
fun.
down lucid dreaming right now on Neptune.
Yeah, Neptune. So Neptune connects us. Neptune is a planet of illusion. Neptune is uh, it's a really interesting place. It's where we're trying to find that balance of, well, how is this world that is an illusion, how is it actually showing up in my reality? And what am I perceiving? Am I perceiving the reality of that which is, or am I perceiving this illusion of what I think it is?
Oh,
Knowing it's still all an illusion. Like,
gotcha.
so really interesting.
Are you well, actually, before I get into that question, let's talk about the construction or the orchestration, I guess is a better way to put it, of the music in Aligned. I heard a lot of kind of as a bed. It sounded like you used the what's the name of that Indian instrument? It just has that. It's just a
Yeah, so
constant tone. Is that?
the
Did you use
tambura,
that?
actually the tambura. So most of
Tambora.
these tones, I really wanted to keep as unearthly as possible. And so because of that, the album is actually it's ambient compositions that are tuned to the specific frequencies of each planet. And
Okay.
that frequency, that Hertz frequency, that was actually mathematically calculated back in the 70s by a Swiss mathematician, Hans Cousteau. And there's a
No.
formula that basically it's like there's an indirect correlation between the size of the planet and its general oscillation, or the speed at which it's spinning.
Right.
And so these formulas have given us this central tuning point. So ambient compositions with what you heard, they're actually planetary gongs. They're made by Paiste, a company out of Germany, and they're gongs that are tuned to that specific planetary frequency.
Oh.
And then we added Sanskrit mantra. So you were totally in the Indian vein, like
Okay.
right
Okay.
on, spot on. So we added mantra that connects to each of the planets. And we can talk about mantra in a minute, because that's actually interesting in and of itself.
Okay.
And then we have NASA recorded space sounds.
I thought I recognized some of it.
You're like, I know that
Well, I
sound.
know that then. Voyager picked that up in 1962.
There you go, exactly.
Yeah,
So,
Voyager did a lot
yeah.
of crazy work. It was amazing. But
Yeah.
okay, so I was right and I was wrong. So it wasn't a tambora, they were gongs.
Gongs, but you were really, really spot on in the fact that they were drowning, they were droning this tone
Mhm.
that was it's the basically the tuning of the planet.
Gotcha.
And that, so gongs are really cool because they have such a broad range of frequencies that they stimulate in the body. So if you've ever had a gong bath, for instance, you can, like, gone to a yoga class or a meditation class, and the person ends, or a sound healing class, and the person uses big gongs. Feels amazing in the physical body, because it's really washing. I mean, you get these very low to the very high tones in a way that your body's like, give me more. So it's very
Beat it.
exactly. The gongs are so therapeutic in that sense.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So that's cool. That
And
was some.
mantra, Tim,
Go
this is
ahead.
kind of cool. Actually, mantra back in the day in India,
Mhm.
the Ayurvedic doctors, which were the Ayurveda is the medical system essentially of India,
Mhm.
they would use mantra prescriptively. They would say, okay, you have a sore throat that's connected to this imbalance in the organ, and we see that and they would go into the emotional state as well, very
Oh,
similar to actually like German new medicine that's coming back of, well, yeah, of course, the emotion connects to the physical body.
yeah, that does make
So,
sense, doesn't it?
yeah, it's totally. And so they would actually prescribe based on, you suck on this honeysuckle and these particular, herbs that I'm going to give you, and chant these mantras X amount of times per day. So sound was
Wow,
used prescriptively as well.
that's amazing. And not, it wasn't strictly Eastern.
Yeah.
Germany was doing this too. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Now there's they call it German New Medicine, and it's really this deep dive into understanding the originating essence of dis-ease in the physical system, and that
Okay.
can be, it's usually all directly correlated to external events and then how those events are processed in the body. And it makes sense because our entire physical system, we're nothing but a series of patterns. The whole universe is nothing but a series of patterns.
Yep.
So if you can begin to break down and understand the pattern, suddenly there's really nothing that can't be unraveled yet. It's a function of perceiving the pattern.
Right. Going back just a bit to.
Yes. Sorry, I love to jump ahead. I love to talk about
No,
all
it's
the
a
cool
it's
stuff.
amazing.
So,
You tapped on a bunch of my initial questions. I'm going to ask you to step back just a little bit in time.
okay.
So you are at a point, and we're talking at the edge of the start of COVID, and you feel something. Was this the you felt a resonance?
Mhm.
Would you say that's accurate, or would you say, and that's kind of what got you started in the study of this, or, and you kind of tapped on this a little bit, but I'd like to I'd like to get your insight, if you will, as to what it was that moment that put you on this path,
Mm.
if you could.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure, for me at least, that there's ever been a singular experience or moment of aha. I think it's always been for me, it's always been a series of steps, a series of progressions, a series of experiences that have led me to my next step.
Okay.
There's
Okay.
always been an inclination for me to learn. I love to learn.
Oh
I'm,
yeah, me too. I'm in
you
the
know,
same boat.
like, yeah, exactly. And I very much consider myself a polymath in because I love life and understanding and recognizing these patterns, the patterns of life, in a way that I can be talking about one thing, I can be experiencing or looking at one thing, but have a different perspective because of information of another experience that happened over here.
Mm,
In order to kind of get to that point, you've had to have a lot of experiences that have moved you, that have allowed you to kind of interweave and braid your path into this plating of sorts that takes us into now a direction that is very congruent with all of this once seemingly divergent experience and information.
okay.
So a singular event, I think for me, the the event that encouraged me to really evaluate how I want to show up in the world was the passing of my father.
Okay.
And we all have, everybody has loss, everybody has grief, everybody has, it's life, right?
Yeah.
So, and yet in that moment you feel like you're the only one experiencing
That's
this.
very true. Yeah. You feel
And
very isolated. Yeah.
you feel completely isolated and alone. And yet the reality is that it's impossible to ever be alone. And that's not just me waxing poetic or me, applying spiritual science. No, that's physics. Um, the way that the protonic network works is that of complete connectivity. So every single proton everywhere in the universe is directly connected. And we have the mathematical formulas for that now. Actually, Nassim Haramein and the International Space Federation recently published a paper talking about this.
Hmm.
And at the very core of every proton is actually a black hole. So those things that we once thought were, oh, the progenitor of destruction, and it's this dark energy that we don't know what's going to happen, but maybe there's something else there. And some scientists for a while was like, well, actually, maybe this is not death, maybe this is life. Well, we now have science and math to back, yeah, the black holes are actually the spiritual essence of creation. And we all these little neurons running through our protons running through our body, they all carry these pure potential outlets of creation.
That's
It's kind of
amazing. So is this in relation at all to a theory I heard about while I was at NASA, that black holes
mm,
draw all this matter in? There's got to be an endpoint,
mm.
a white
So
hole, if you will, or a white fountain, or
it
whatever it
actually,
is.
yeah, absolutely. It
Okay.
actually, and granted, full disclosure, I did not write this.
You didn't? No,
Did not
okay.
write this formula, but it's my understanding that the scientists are actually, who did write the formula, are saying it's actually the opposite. So instead of a sucking
Oh,
out, it's actually a moving, or sucking in, it's actually a moving out, a connection of this information.
in the
So
same
what
structure?
I thought was I'm sorry.
In the same structure?
In the same structure, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So check it out. I'll send you the link to the paper because I think you'd really, really like it. But if you just look up Nassim Haramein and the International Space Federation, and it's the latest paper on free energy. It's
Oh,
pretty darn awesome.
yeah. Yeah.
So,
I
and
know
its
I know of
applications,
the theory, but yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
and its applications of how it can and will show up in the future of how we can live life here. So it's really important science. It's so, I mean, that science changes the shape and the color of our entire globe.
It's
So
amazing. That's
yeah,
amazing.
and it all
And
and it all reinforces that the universe is holographic. We're all connected,
my
and
next question to you was the holographic universe. Okay.
100%, 100%. I mean, and that's the interesting thing too, because even from a spiritual science perspective, that life is life is really, interestingly enough, life comes out of nothingness. And thus it is nothingness. So the Buddhist understanding that life is that you are nothing is not you're nothing. It's no. This is nothing. It stems from the separation, and that first separation moves us into this point of duality, because I can't exist unless I exist in relation to you. Time and space we have to have that pull, that separation, right? So moving out of that point of nothingness, kind of like what we were just talking about with the black hole.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
yeah, hologram. It's all hologram, baby. So how are we going to
Hologram.
play the game? How are we going to show up and play the game? That's the question.
Can I make my own hologram? I mean, I'm just kidding. I'm teasing you. The
I think the theory is actually yes. That's the
That's what
point.
I've heard, actually.
And that you're not. See, that's the thing is that we're not victim to our circumstance. When you can accept the fact, A, we're all born, and B, we're all going to die. It's how we play the game in the middle. And if you can remove the fear of death off of stage B, suddenly that living, and we realize, wait, this really is a game. If this is a hologram, which we have science to show that it is, how am I going to show up? And knowing that if you come from nothingness, that also means you have allness. You have all of the creative potential. You have all of the divine and the profane in you at one time. So what are you going to turn on at any moment? How are you going to show up in this life? That's
Okay.
actually a very empowering place. A little scary sometimes too,
A little scary, a little bit.
but totally empowering, you know?
Yeah, no,
Play the game.
I see what you're saying there. So, something tells me that calling the universe and our existence and all that a hologram is somehow deceptive in that we think of Star Trek and uh hollow. Oh my gosh, I'm a Star Trek fan. I'm blanking on what it's called.
Well, it's
uh,
it's interesting because if we ever get to a point, and this is also going back to this idea of allness and nothingness, if we ever get to a point where we can define anything, uh, a celestial being, an ascended master, a god, we've actually never reached the end because we still have I'm defining myself in relation to what I'm perceiving as this divine object or something that is still separate from me. But the truth is that that's actually not the definition of a divine allness or nothingness. So
Interesting.
so the hologram can continue and expand. This is interesting. One of the things too, um, some of the research I've recently been coming into is it talks about how archangels. So we think of these great ascended celestial beings. If this is your proclivity to believe in this or not, doesn't matter. You've heard the stories. So archangels. A lot of times we think of them as, oh, they're here to help us, or they're here to towards for something us to aspire towards, or they are helpers from God, which in and of itself, then we still defined what God is, and there's separation. But so archangels actually have their own points of expansion,
Also,
which means they're constantly seeking their own evolution, just like you and I are. We're seeking our own evolution. Everything in the universe is expanding. Um, we're not alone in that. And yet we perceive ourselves as separate from some of these other entities, beings, etc., that are also expanding as well, which is really interesting if you stop to think about it, of like, how 5 seconds ago, how did I perceive my relationship to, let's even just say, an angel, let alone an archangel.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it takes you down an interesting rabbit hole.
It does. Uh, it's called a holodeck, by the way.
Holodeck. Okay.
Holodeck.
Right.
So my original question was, if the universe is a hologram, if this mic isn't really here, it's just a collection of projections. We're doing. Um, I guess my ultimate question on that particular subject is whether you believe in the holographic theory or not. And you're right, there is a lot of science to back up the holographic universe. The so is a computer required to run that program, the program that is our universe?
Do you
Eh,
think that there's only one way to run a
I'm just
hologram?
curious.
No, 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 but I think that the question is that in general, is it that do you think do we perceive there's only a singular way for a hologram to exist? Or do we think that there could be an infinite number of ways for that hologram to be projected? But remember, just like this idea that if we're moving from time and space, if we're moving from my I-ness, the singular me, Charlene, to that's something out there on the other side that's actually projecting this hologram, that in and of itself is still part of a hologram. It's still holographic because it still exists in this place of duality.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying. Okay, that brings me to another question. Also learned this while I was at NASA. Um, there has been a lot of comparison between the very large and the very small. You may know about this.
Mm-hmm.
So the atomic structure, for example, is very reminiscent of a solar system. Are we perhaps less of a hologram than we are part of a larger being? And is that what you're speaking to?
It's an interesting idea. So whether we're viewing something at the microcosmic level, quantum mechanics, if we're looking at it at the macrocosmic level, relativity, etc., we are perceiving a point, well, we had been perceiving a point of disconnect between the two, but we absolutely recognize that the both of these schools were saying the exact same thing, right? Exactly as you just said.
Hmm.
Cool thing, by the way, you really need to read this paper. I think you're going to love it, about the free
Awesome.
energy exchange, because it directly connects the macrocosmic and the microcosmic. So
Good
I
to
think
know.
you're going to love it. Yeah.
Awesome.
But there's an ancient, it's actually Vedic. It's from Ayurveda, from India.
Mhm.
The understanding that the universe exists as a dream of one single, we don't really have words to describe. The closest thing would be divine being, entity.
Okay.
This, we'll call him a divine dude, right? Okay.
Fine, dude.
This essence, this divine dude essence is
It's great.
having
I'm
an
sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead. Go ahead.
but in order for it, because there is no gender, right?
Okay.
Because if there's gender, then there's duality. But in order for this singularity to experience itself, it must move from a point of oneness to a point of two-ness or duality. And from that space, then, at least in this Vedic understanding, all of the gods, the goddesses, the angels, the demons, humanity, the animals, the worlds that we know, everything was birthed into existence as a way for this singular divine dude to understand the fullness of what it is, the diabolical, the divine,
Okay. Okay.
all encompassed into one. And that's actually, that's at the kind of the central point of Hinduism. You know, a lot of the Western thinkers, they're not thinkers, but a lot of Western folks think that Hinduism is actually polytheistic. If you get to its very core, it is not polytheistic at all. It's like, no, there's one singularity
Interesting.
from which all are birthed. And these are just these gods and goddesses that we connect to are aspects or archetypes, they're faces of the divine. So we can understand a reflection of ourself in more purely, in more totality. I mean, we can barely wrap our brains around the idea of singularity as it is. How am I supposed to understand more about me in relation to singularity? Let me just like bite off a tiny little morsel so I can begin to have that cerebral process, at least on my end.
Gotcha. Gotcha. You actually brought up an interesting, well, it popped in my head anyway. There's the theory of the ancient astronaut theory. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Tell me about this one.
Okay. Basically, it says back when just, well, it encompasses a lot of things, but that similar to, say, angels and demons visiting Earth, that we were visited by ancient travelers, astronauts, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
who came down to Earth, and we, in our infancy as people, perceived them as gods
Mm-hmm.
because they had all this advanced technology. They had the ability to cross the universe and all that fun stuff. They could fly, probably. They looked different because they were wearing very specific garb that, if we look at
Was
them today,
appropriate to
look
them.
like spacesuits. You know,
It's pretty cold
so
in space, I hear. I don't know.
yeah, like negative 250 degrees minimum or something like that. But so would those two, would what you just mentioned in the Vedic texts
Mm-hmm.
parallel that idea?
100%. Yeah, 100%. And we also have to recognize that when we think of time as operating in a linear perspective, we've
Mhm.
totally missed the understanding of time. Time exists in the singular. It actually exists only right now. There's really literally only a now moment. We might think that something we remember an experience of another now moment that might have happened, what we perceive as in the past, but it isn't the past because it was a now moment. And even if we begin to relive it, we're reliving that now moment now from then. So time
Very
is
interesting.
this really funny kind of thing. And even in space, I mean, there's like time moves at different rates in space, depending on
Moves at
what
different rates here
celestial
on
or
Earth too.
exactly, depending on the pole, the yes. So
Yes.
so if we're looking at, if we're thinking of this time operating, time moves more like this than it does like this. And
Well, like a DNA helix.
very much so, an interweaving of the DNA.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Pattern. Found a pattern.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I mean, for instance, like a lot of the ancient civilization understanding, like with the Anunnaki and the different races that have come before. I mean, if you really kind of start seeing the patterns, it's not nearly as far fetched, especially when you connect the science that's here now, that's really coming out and saying, yeah, that actually does totally support it. And then it suddenly starts making all these cuckoo mystical ideas and foundational aspects of religious persuasions just suddenly start making sense. And I don't mean religion that has been polluted by man. I mean religion that has come directly from a spiritual connection and understanding of something deep within you so powerfully, viscerally, oh,
That's
huh,
truth. Yeah.
exactly.
Gotcha. The oh God, that was such a good question too, and that went right on my head. I need to
Well,
listen to
now
your
I just have
soundtracks
this.
again.
I have this song. So when information, etc., comes to me through songs. So I just have rocket. I'm a rocket man,
Yeah.
like through my head right now, but it just keeps back and forth. Maybe it's going up and down.
Could be.
So,
It was such a good question too. I know that much.
oh, it'll come.
Our in our, I guess, not necessarily even recent history, but I'd say within the last 200 years of, I'd say, human existence, there have been stories. You mentioned time variance and it kind of brought me to this point um, of time travelers. Are these
Mm.
people operating through technology or through intention? Both? Either?
It's interesting because it always leads me back to this question of what is magic? Science that has not yet been understood. When we understand the power that is innate to these physical bodies, as well as these energetic bodies residing in, around, and on these physical bodies, um, my gut tells me that the intention that comes into play with that, just because of how we move through this world, of how we can manifest in this world, is 100% connected to it.
Okay.
I think there's always an element of an intentionality that has to precede any sort of scientific understanding. You have to have a question in order to find the answer. And if you have a question, there is always an answer. You cannot have a question that does not have an answer. That's not the way the universe exists. Um, so I think I truly believe that the depth of intention, and I don't just mean like feel good. I'm going to intend to win like $1 million today because then I'm going to feed all of the blind cats in my neighborhood, which I mean is great. And if intend away, let's feed all the blind cats in their neighborhood. Animal lover right here, but if we really sit in and soak in the potential of what intention is, what is that manifesting power that the universe is responding to at any given moment? And thank God it doesn't necessarily respond to every single thought that we have. But the only reason it doesn't respond to every single thought that we have is because of all the other blockage that's currently misaligning us from that true connection to allow that immediate flow. So what do we need to do to get to that point of immediacy, immediate flow? Sometimes
Listen to your
there's an
album.
old, yeah, well, there's like that, remember that old Garth Brooks song, some of God's greatest gifts are unanswered prayers? Totally
I
makes
don't
me
think
think.
I know. No, I don't think I know that one. I'll have to
Yeah,
look that up.
I want to say it's like from the late 80s or 90s, maybe earlier, I don't know. But I remember hearing it as a kid, and it was one of those songs that really stuck with me. Not that that's hard to do. I have this weird thing that if I hear music, usually once, it just sticks in my head
Right.
forever,
So-
um, good or bad. But you know, it's that idea that thank God, or whatever you want to think, yourself, singularity, I don't care, your great Uncle George, you know, thank whomever, that thank goodness that um, sometimes we don't get stuck in our own stuckness.
don't get, yeah, don't get buried in your own,
Yeah,
forgive the term, bullshit.
exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
nothing to
I
forgive.
remember the question that I wanted to ask you, and yeah, it dealt with we talked about ancient astronauts and stuff like that. I don't know if you're aware of the interview with an alien. There's been a couple of them out there on the internet. Most of
Which
them have
one?
been, huh?
Which one?
I know. So this was I guess we call him a gray.
Mhm.
It's supposedly a leaked top secret thing, but it's
Mhm.
made its rounds on the internet. And he's asked a question about how long do you live
Mm.
on your world? And
Mm.
his response is, and he's using some sort of synthesizer because
Mhm.
it sounds a little fake, but the response is still intriguing nonetheless.
Mhm.
Death is a human construct. I thought that was the most like mind-blowing moment in the world. It's like, really? That's awesome.
Mhm. Mhm.
I wish he'd followed up on that. I was like, well, how do you overcome death? Or, you know, I don't know, but he didn't. But what are your thoughts on that particular? This sounds like you kind of answered the question already, but I'd like to hear your
Yeah,
response.
it's a powerful thought, whether it's um, whatever its origin.
Hmm.
So I believe that that is very close to correct as well. Death is a human construct because it's an aspect of human life. I think the construct has been, pardon my French bastardized because it's we have come to try to avoid that which is an inevitable understanding. There are many spiritual paths that, and I use spiritual here because this is really what we're talking about. We're moving beyond the physical, knowing that there is in these spacesuits, these meat suits, there is a finite current understanding of how to enliven this particular body. And perhaps some of that is a bit of a blessing as well. Consider the idea of immortality as you, knowing that, you know what, all I'd have to do is just take it off and put on something else and experience a whole other holographic experience in this holographic universe. Yeah, I'm in. And let's do it again. Let's do it again. Let's, how much can I play? I
Is
mean,
this? I'm sorry to interrupt you.
no.
Is this kind of where the concept of karma comes into play, or not karma?
Yeah,
Well, kind of karma, but gosh,
yeah, no, this,
reincarnation,
yeah,
reincarnation.
yeah, yeah. So, well, and they're really two different, they're really kind of two different topics. So
Yeah, sorry about that.
reincarnation, yeah, no, 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 it's all great.
Hmm.
Reincarnation really takes us into this idea of changing the spacesuit, changing the perspective, changing how we are, how the divine is experiencing itself in this other iteration, in this other point of this time. Karma locks us into this idea that we are stuck to repeat these aspects of these incarnations because we haven't assimilated. But many of the actual mystical spiritual teachings really remind us that karma is only in our own making. It only exists in the mind. When we realize that we are separate, or that I haven't learned this lesson, I'm stuck in this karmic, an aspect of this karmic cycle. As soon as you realize, no, you're not, suddenly you now have permission to leave the building and come back in another way if that's what you choose, or not come back. And then you're sitting on the outside, but you're still in the hologram. So really interesting conversation. But I think that, it's that how we approach as humans, how we approach this idea of death. I mean, if we could really understand it's just part of the next big adventure, it doesn't sound so bad. It's kind of like,
Yeah.
cool, okay, what's the next big adventure? And yet there's this programming that we are to get caught up on, needing to prevent, to stave it off, to push it away. I mean, maybe that in and of itself is its own type of cyclical or karmic pattern. So,
Interesting.
yeah. And I will say, I have a dear friend of mine, speaking of, we were talking about the Greys. So I have a dear friend of mine. She's actually a published author on a variety of fronts. She has her doctorate in psychology, and she has a beautiful book out. If you're into ancient civilizations, kind of understanding who did what to where and for whom and for how many black jelly beans, kind of thing, like, what the history is. It's called Star Civilizations 101, and her name is Dr. Barbara Stone. And if you kind of want to have a background for any of your awesome viewers, that's a fun book. Really check it out. Really interesting. It was actually endorsed by Alex Collier, who I don't know Alex personally, but obviously in that particular sphere has a very strong presence. So yeah, Dr. Barbara Stone, Star Civilizations 101, not even my book.
Civilizations.
Yeah.
101. I'm writing that down.
Woohoo!
Okay. So we've discussed quite a bit.
These are all of some of my favorite topics too. So
now, do you have, I know you got your bowls there. Do you have a sound or a frequency that you think everyone needs every day right now?
this is really interesting, because the answer that immediately comes is not the answer you're looking for, but it is 100% the answer of truth. And that answer is, that frequency is that of love. And I don't mean we should love everybody and get along and hold hands and sing Kumbaya, though if you want to do that, that's great.
It works.
And I love Kumbaya. I mean, it's a great tune, like it's really catchy. But this idea of complete connection to all, that's really what love is. Love's not how you feel with your grandmother or how you like vanilla ice cream. Like, love is, it's the absence of disconnection.
Excellent way to put it.
And when you can connect to the fullness of all, you have access to every single frequency. So me saying, well, it should be this frequency because it would be incorrect, because where you are right now may be different than where you are in 15 minutes, may be different than where you are in a year.
I don't know that that's necessarily true, because don't we all need love?
100%. So because of that, if I were to say, no, you need 76.9 hertz because that's going to do such and such, that would be a
I see
very
what you're
myopic
saying.
approach.
Okay,
But if we
gotcha.
can really exist exactly as you said, 100% high five, I totally agree that if we can exist exactly in that point and that space, that frequency of love, we're actually moving your beginning science shows we're moving our brain into a point of heart brain coherence, and there is very minimal difference between the energetic outflow, the frequency that your heart and your brain are generating. And when you move in that point, I think it's actually zero point 0.1 hertz. So, I mean, it's like right, right locked in.
Mhm.
You experience the world. Let's just say you could walk on water.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, you brought out something else, and I was looking to wrap up, but something else popped up.
Let's do it. Let's do it. I'm in. I'm
Okay,
game.
okay. So this is physiology to a degree that
Okay.
the heart
Hmm.
physiologically now actually has shares some like material, cellular material similar to the brain.
Hmm.
Have you heard about that?
Yes.
Okay.
So
So there is a real connection there.
there is. And the other place that we really have to connect to is actually in our gut and the microbiome. We have more bacteria that are not us than are us. We have more bacteria, them, than we have of our own cells, us, in our own system. And it all stems, most of it stems in the microbiome. So whenever having, I mean, and that's, people talk about it all the time, why diet is so important, why being aware of what we ingest through all of our senses, the mouth, our eyes, our ears, all of that adds up. But you're also influencing the vibration, the frequency, and even the specific species of our microbiome. You want to go down a really
Wow.
physical rabbit hole, check out the microbiome. I mean, um, it's a very powerful place to begin to feel physically empowered in an easy way. You're like, I don't know about this sound mumbo jumbo. Can't see it. I don't know what frequency I need. Boy, this is boring. Fine. Research your own microbiome. And there's
That's
there's
amazing.
lots of really great stuff online um, connecting to that, though. There's also a lot of junk online too.
There it is, unfortunately. Um, yeah, that's true. Too
But for
true.
all the good stuff, we have to have equal
I get,
parts.
well, there's your balance.
It's true.
uh,
So.
but okay, is there a microbiome frequency to balance?
Well,
Just out
there's
of curiosity.
yeah, it's a great question. So there's microbiome, but it's tricky because there's microbiomes all across your body. I mean, you have a microbiome on your hands, on your
Good point.
feet, so there's
Specific to the gut?
and there are specific to the gut as well, and different species that you either do or don't have, depending on what you do or don't eat. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a really complex topic, actually, and there actually hasn't been a ton of frequency specific work done for the microbiome. The microbiome itself is more of a burgeoning type of aspect of science. So then the actual frequency of that is still something that it's still a little fresh and a little new. So
Let me ask you something else then. I've been hearing and seeing a lot of stories about human deworming.
mm,
Uh, we have all these, you were talking about the stuff that isn't us, and that's some of that I assume is parasites.
there are huge connections that have been made, actually, even since late 1800s, even really strongly kicking in the early to mid 1900s. But the idea that parasitic life detrimentally impacts our physical life. So, I mean, we know that there was just an article that came out talking about how fungus in the body, in the brain, will cause the person to exhibit the exact same symptoms as Alzheimer's.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
there's several doctors who shared that they were doing postmortem autopsies on folks who had transitioned from MS, and
Oh,
every single MS patient had a brain that was riddled, it's a neurological condition, but had their brain was riddled with parasites, things that
Wow.
you wouldn't think about. Um, Cancer. There are many types of cancers that every time someone passes from cancer, they have their system is inundated with parasites. The initial thought was, oh, cancer comes and then parasites come, but there are many doctors, especially out of Europe. There's several Italian doctors who said, no, 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 parasites beget cancer.
I've heard that
So
too.
there are some really interesting work about these bad boys. And I'm a huge proponent that, man, once a year, detox.
Detox. So
And
is
I
that
don't just mean like go to a juice bar. I mean like literal detox.
now,
Because your
is there
body,
sound frequency therapy to help with that?
you know what, this is interesting because there probably is.
Okay.
However, I there's not enough information for me to speak intelligently about this, at least not enough information that I firsthand am privy to or have experienced firsthand. But if you think about the way that frequency works, if you can catch something in lower doses or in lower states of disorder or dis-ease, it's a lot easier to deal with it than when you got a lot of stuff to deal with. If
Gotcha.
you're if you know what, if you wait until a year to clean your bedroom, it's a little tricky than if you do it every weekend.
Good point. Good point.
So yeah, but there absolutely should. I know that there would be, and it'd actually be a really interesting way to empower people to get rid of the things in their life that don't work. But then it goes back, like what you were talking about, Tim, this idea of intentionality and active choice making in our everyday lives too. So it's not just a single, because the last thing we would ever want, or frequency ever should be, is a singular pill. Because then why would you use it? Frequency is something which resonates holistically, powerfully. So how do you make the most of that? Because it's not just about fixing something, it's about empowering the life that you do have.
Gotcha. Okay, let's talk about dangerous frequencies at this crop. Again, I was gonna wrap up, I swear, but something came up. And I hope I'm not keeping you.
No, it's good.
So I've heard a lot of, and I tend to believe it, that our 5G capabilities in cell phones and in other types of communication and even higher rates are detrimental. Do you find this to be true, or at least believe it to be true, or potentially true, or any of
I
that?
think everything can be used for our benefit or to our detriment.
Okay.
Water. Water, we need it for life,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely. But you can also literally kill yourself by drinking too much water. And I'm not even just talking about drowning. I mean, literally ingesting too much water
Yep.
is terrible for the physical body. So when it comes to certain frequencies, frequencies are the exact same way. You can have a beneficial frequency and you turn up the intensity or the volume too much, it wreaks havoc on your physical system. Here's a great example. So you go to do you have, are there waterfalls near where you are, at least somewhere
Yeah,
close
there's a
by?
couple. Yeah.
Okay, so you know how when you walk up to a waterfall, it's like, oh, when you first you're approaching it and you don't even see it, but you hear it in the distance. Oh,
Sure.
this is really nice. It's almost like this anticipatory excitement that begins to build.
Right.
And you're walking towards the waterfall and you get there and this is great. I want to get closer. I want to scope this out. And as you do, it gets a little heavy for the ears. And there's actually a point at which even the healing frequency of the waterfall, because waterfall connects us to white noise. White noise has very healing properties within our cellular system. When you turn up that volume too loud, it becomes highly detrimental.
Oh, okay.
So
That makes
there's
sense.
also a function of how we're exposed, when we're exposed, etc. We use these really high frequencies. For instance, doctors use very high frequencies to go in and break up kidney stones. So it's helping the person, but
Hmm.
it's also destroying something that had naturally occurred within their body, though maybe not from the best choices that had been made, or for something that had, exposure to something, etc. So it's a really interesting question. In general, there are ways that detrimental energies can always be harmonized. So think about it, is that
Oh, that
any
was my
answer
next.
always has a question. So anything of detriment always has a corresponding beneficial frequency. So there are many things that can be done to harmonize otherwise harmful experiences. And that's
Okay.
true for all of life.
Is there a solution then to these these potentially detrimental frequencies that I can play Freebird, for example,
Yeah.
on the radio?
Oh,
Sorry,
that'd be
that's a
awesome.
horrible example, but
I love that.
and
Yeah, Stairway to Heaven. I know.
so,
That'd be awesome. So there's actually a really interesting science that's come out of Egypt. It's called biogeometry. This is actually the pendant that I'm wearing.
oh,
Um,
okay.
it's it's based on ancient Egyptian temple science and totally grounded in modern scientific, peer-reviewed, published work. And it connects us to the understanding that the universe expresses itself through patterns, and patterns can exist in a variety of ways. So every angle has a corresponding light color, a light projection,
Hmm.
has a corresponding sound projection, has a corresponding, etc. So that there's a lot of different ways that a space can be re-energized or reconnected to a greater understanding, a greater balance for whomever's in the space. Biogeometry has some really powerful techniques and modalities that allow um, users, practitioners, to rebalance their space, not only their physical space, but the space around them.
Okay.
And it's actually a subject that I love so much. I've done basically as much, almost as much studying as can be done to this point, and will be pursuing my practitioner licensing with them next year because I just really believe in the
Nice.
modality.
That's amazing.
And yeah, it is powerful. And when you experience it firsthand, I mean, I could tell you so many stories of where I'm using shape and angle to heal aspects of a physical body that's blowing my mind. And I'm going, this doesn't make any sense in the physical world. And yet I'm watching it with my eyes. Trust me, my intention's not that good. Um, but there is something really powerfully there. So there are modalities like biogeometry that can assist us in being able to mitigate harmful
Missions.
yes,
Okay.
coming into our space. So
So let's go back. Let's expand on that just ever so slightly. I'm reminded of a movement in the late 60s, early 70s that happened, at least here in America. I think it was worldwide to one degree, where people started wearing pyramid hats to help align their frequencies.
mhm.
Are we talking about the same basic thing? Because I'm sure it's more complicated than pyramid hats, but
Well, it's interesting. So the pyramid shape has been shown to have powerful conductive properties of energy, but the problem is that a lot of times it's not to our benefit. That
oh,
the energy can move. If we look at the physics of how energy moves, and you think about a boat that moves through water, so there's actually what's called an energy key that is developed, and we can physically see off of that movement of the boat through water. And you'll be like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I see some of the water move one way and some of the water move the other way. It's
yeah,
literally the parting of this ether that's in front of us.
okay.
So in that parting, there can be movement that wraps back towards the boat and actually propels it forward. There's also aspects of the water too that have what, if we apply it to a physical system, has a bit more of a detrimental aspect to our physical body.
Oh,
Here's an example. So if there's an energy movement, a grid or a pattern of movement that's moving clockwise, it's actually beneficial to the body, because what it's doing is that the energy is moving from the ether, from the invisible into density or into matter. So that's good for our body, right? It's bringing us more energy, and that's sense it's usually beneficial energy that's moving into the physical space. Yay, happy day. However, if we're moving counterclockwise, we're actually moving from the physical space into the ether, into the subtle realm, into the realm we can't see and we experience not in the physical way. That's great for meditation. It's great for spirituality. It's great for even for rituals or offering of prayers or whatever, but it's not necessarily the best for your physical body.
gotcha.
So even how energy moves can be directed in such a way that we can generate a specific outcome of what it is that we're looking to do. Sometimes I want to move energy out of my space.
Okay,
Sometimes I want to bring it in.
gotcha. So I'm trying to think. So this is for me, this is the clockwise.
Yeah, clockwise. Clockwise. Yeah,
And
yeah. Don't look
then,
at my. Pay
yeah,
no attention to the
maybe
Zoom.
in terms of the reverse angle, but yeah, if you're me, this is clockwise. If
But
this is
clockwise. Yep, clockwise too.
counterclockwise,
It's like you're looking at a clock.
right? And then, so I'm thinking you mentioned how water moves one way and then the other. And I found it interesting. I just, not too long ago, I visited the USS Hornet, and aircraft carriers have their bridges set to one side. There's a logical reason for it, but it occurs to me that's on the clockwise angle of the of the water moving past.
Interesting. Well, that's interesting too, this idea of that reconnection back into the physical space, that
Yeah.
landing, that grounding.
Mhm. How about that?
Hmm.
Interesting stuff.
Look at you seeing patterns everywhere.
How
Hmm.
about that? Okay, so let's talk about your music real quick. Let's do you have an example for us to play, or can I play an example at this point?
Absolutely, totally. So there's a lot of fun music. If we either want to literally go into space, if we
Mhm.
want to ground into this upcoming season that we're finding ourselves moving into, shifting into, you know, Christmas is my favorite time of year. It always has been.
Oh yeah.
I what I love about the holiday season too is that it matters less what it is that you're celebrating, and that even for people who feel very Scrooge-like during this time of year, there's still an essence of lightness. There's a frequency of the season that we're all connecting to, and each season actually does have its own frequency. Um, it's interesting in classical music. Composers talk about this a lot because we write music. The key that we compose music in is often based on the color, the feeling, the frequency that we're looking to connect into, or emotion we're looking to help evoke. So
Interesting.
there's a lot of this really deep knowledge that happens all the time. And, no matter what's going on in the world around you, no matter how hectic a holiday season is, or overwhelming it is to be with certain people at this certain time, we can always connect back into that essence of what November, December really are moving us towards. And that's that idea of reconnection, of slowing down into that space, living intentionally. And in that, when we align with that season, we're actually aligning to that greater singularity, that
Okay.
place of love, that
I
greater
like it.
frequency. So
I
yeah,
feel
I love Christmas, and
oh yeah.
it just makes me happy. It always has. We actually have a Christmas concert that we're going to be doing. We're going to be streaming
Oh,
live from our home. Yeah. It's on November 16th and it's free. Just,
hey.
yeah, just stream it on your mobile device or your laptop, snuggle up with your hot cocoa or whatever, makes you happy on a holiday weekend. And even if you miss it, just sign up and you'll get the replay so you can watch it
Woo.
anytime. Um, but yeah, so we're really excited about that. Um, I also have a course that's coming up that
Cool.
is, yeah, that is also very musically driven, but very scientifically connected as well. And that's on the Shift Network. We have our first free intro event that's coming up on November 2nd. And if you miss that for any reason, totally fine. You can actually still, if you register, you can go to that page and still watch that free intro event. Really, really cool. And then that leads into a 4-week course that starts right after Thanksgiving on November 28th. And it meets every Tuesday for 4 weeks, right up before Christmas. And we'll be listening to the sounds of archangels using these 19 chromatically tuned quartz crystal singing bowls. And I have a lot of guests, scientists, spiritual scientists, and really connecting into some of these deeper truths that are great reminders of the singularity and the love that is within all of us and how we connect to that in real ways, whether from looking at crystals themselves, watching sound being made visible, um, tapping into aspects of these celestial beings of the archangels. And then even a theory that I've been working on is called the archetypes of sound, and how relationship between notes make all the difference in the world for our interaction with that music and what that means to us. It's kind of like life, like how
Yeah.
we show up in a relationship. So yeah, so it's really fun, and I'm always happy to share music. So
Excellent. Thank you.
maestro.
I'll put all that up as you
Yeah,
talk about it.
yeah.
The let's sorry, that sounded like a wrap up and it was, but something else cropped up for me real
Yeah.
quick. You were speaking of how composers use specific keys that they write their music in.
Hmm.
As an example, I know at least early on, the Rolling Stones wrote their stuff in B flat.
Mm.
What does that tell you?
So there's a lot. So B flat's an interesting key. So a lot of times, especially in pop music, uh, you'll frequently find bands that just find the resonance that connects to the musicians that are there, how they um, are showing up harmonically, melodically, even. So, what range does their lead singer or singers really? Where does their voice resonate? So even when we're in the studio, I mean, we'll go through one of the things that sometimes we spend the most time on before we even start recording is just finding the right key. And we'll sing in, gosh, like feels like all of the keys, obviously not, but we sing in so many different keys, just to really, because every note will, the way that the note interacts with my voice would be very different than how it interacts with Adele. Our instruments are different. So there's actually this really fine tuning opportunity that bands will frequently go into. And, so a lot of times that's why they tend to really resonate around specific keys. Like Frank Sinatra really hung out around F in general,
Mm,
um, and F's derivatives basically. But when it comes to writing, of actually composing, so moving out of the song space where we're really connecting to a more finite instrument with the voice, in general, not always, but if we're moving into a point where we have different instruments, it could suddenly take over and kind of change the timbre or the tone of a particular passage that we would like to hear, which happens more in the classical world. That's where keys really, really come into play. So rather than me putting too much on the Rolling Stones with B flat, B flat tends to take us into it's a grounded place of connection in general. But that could have been an intention that was put out on their part, but it could have also been really just a technical, this is where we groove. And that in and of itself, that strong intentionality is
Yeah.
just as important. Can't
Yeah.
override that.
Okay. I swear that's my last question. You answered that question beautifully.
Oh.
So we have November 16th. We have
Mhm.
November 2nd.
It's December 16th for the Christmas concert. Sorry,
I'm
I might have
sorry.
said November. No,
I
and
thought I
thanks for
heard
catching me.
November. My
It's
mistake.
very possible. It's very possible.
That makes more sense for the Christmas stuff. It's like,
You're
wow,
like,
she's
well,
doing
that's
it
really
early this
early.
year. So for Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. But I
let's
am
see.
giving a TED talk on November 18th, so there is
You're
a
doing
lot
a
of stuff
TED
going
Talk.
on.
Good for you. Right
Yeah,
on.
thank you. Yeah, it's going to be a very festive season.
You're busy. That's great. TED
It's
Talk
good.
on November which?
Yeah, so the TED Talk's November 18th.
18th.
Um, but the course, the intro course where we listen to the bowls, we talk about the seasonality of the tones, the tonal aspects of each season. Even archangels will actually be listening. So I one of the things I do is that I listen to frequencies and tones of different beings
Hmm.
and bring them into an octave, specifically through these bowls, through the quartz crystal singing bowls, in a way that it becomes accessible to those who hear, who can hear. It's interesting. All my life, I've always heard things, and when I was a child, I just thought this was very, very normal. And then when I got a little older, I realized this is not normal. But in many ways, it's a tremendous blessing and asset because it allows me to connect into different places and dimensions. And
Good for you.
so I love being able to help people really connect back into it. I mean,
S-
that's what Aligned was about. I've
mm.
heard space since I was I don't
Wow,
even know
you
how.
can actually hear those things. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
And it's just a function of perceiving. I mean, some people have very strong abilities to perceive by feeling. Some people have very strong abilities to perceive by seeing.
Hmm.
We call them psychic. Everyone's psychic in our own ways. It's just a
My
function of how much are we turning up that volume.
right. My psychic on my team,
Hmm.
JJ, she qualified me as an empath.
Hmm. You feel,
I
you
feel a
feel.
lot, yeah. Well, I
Yes.
often talk about it on the show where I go into a given space, location, what have you.
Hmm.
And sometimes, especially if there's something malevolent there, I'm gonna hit that wall, oh,
Hmm.
metaphysical wall at the threshold of the place. It's like, oh, something's way off here. And then, then my alertness goes up and I'm on, you know, pins and needles until we figure out what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a powerful gift. The being able to sense through all of these and knowing actually your ability to see is just as strong as your ability to feel. It's just not one might be turned up a lot more than the other right now. So,
Right, right,
you can mix as you want. Like, you
right.
know, we all
Makes
can.
them,
We can all mix. We can all mix a little.
that's great.
So that's so cool. I love that. And I bet
I
that's really,
also, sorry,
it's
go ahead.
amazing for what you do. Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm a little more when I was a kid, but I can still do it now. I see auras,
Hmm.
which is,
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
all the time, but once in a while I'll see auras.
And remember, our sense organs, it's all that they are doing is perceiving different frequencies and
Yes,
frequencies that exist in different ranges. So what we hear, we use our ears to hear certain frequencies. We use our eyes to perceive other frequencies.
yeah,
And yet they're all frequency. It's all
exactly.
vibration. It's just a function of our physical makeup of how we connect to those vibrations.
And it changes over
Yes.
time.
Yes.
I find. I'll give you a good example. My cousin, after having her second child, almost immediately, her mind, her visual, anyway,
Mm.
system changed, and she became a medium. She was able to see the dead.
Mm.
and they walk in during
Mm-hmm.
she does therapy, and she says she'd be with a patient and suddenly their dad would show up. Well, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, here's what happened for real. Just so you have some insights. Like, what? And she called me because she was just, Tim, am I losing my mind? I said, no, I don't think so. I don't think that's it at all. And I put her in touch
Yeah.
with JJ, and we sussed that out. But it was, women especially go through a huge metaphysical, not metaphysical, but yes, that and a physical change, especially when they have children.
And she
'Cause-
literally grew eyes in the back and the front of her head.
right. Well,
You know,
specifically, it's the frontal lobe that
exactly.
really hyper develops during the
Mm-hmm.
process of pregnancy.
Mm-hmm.
So I I believe that completely. She just developed those additional frequencies and was able to see what she sees.
Yeah, she had her little receptors now. They've
Yeah.
shifted.
Yeah.
Yeah. The neural firing now moves in a different pattern so that she can perceive. And
Mhm.
that's why, when people say, well, the human body can only, what
Well,
is this 97, 95% junk DNA? Are you kidding me? Come on. Well, it's kind of like a weed. One man's weed is another man's, prize rose bush or
right.
whatever. So
Right.
it's the
Good way
same
to put
type
it.
of thing. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of untapped potentiality. And when we look, there are some really interesting, even historical events that really strongly suggest that we are living here of our potential when our potential is, I can't even.
Yeah. Almost infinite,
Exactly.
if not infinite. Um, yeah. So, okay, final question. Sorry, you keep spawning these questions in me. So, there is I wouldn't call it a theory. Wouldn't call it a belief either. I call it, I guess I don't know what to call it immediately, but that we are, as you've been saying pretty much this entire podcast, energy.
Mm.
And that we are, in fact, you did say it, we are energy beings laced over this human form.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen even some video that espouse to that form leaving the body upon physical death.
Mm.
So, do you hold? That's a stupid question. She already answered it.
No, I mean, and I will say, and it's interesting because after my father transitioned,
You did see it, yeah.
I not only did both my mother and I, we actually physically watched his light body stand up out of his physical body and walk out of the window at the
That's
end of the
correct.
room.
That's amazing.
And it was interesting. The whole sky outside went bright. I mean, the
That's
I
amazing.
mean, there are so we'd be here for another 3 hours, but like of what I can tell you of all the one-on-one experiences. But when it comes to that shift, that pattern of watching the energy body, at a time when you that would be the last thing you're thinking of. I mean, what kind of state are you in? People are like, oh, you were in shock. I really wasn't in shock. You can ask my husband. Like he was
Mm,
sitting. We were all sitting. Like, it was more
wow.
awe. It was
Yeah.
truly more awe. I can't believe I'm witnessing this. This is interesting, and yet here it is.
And you
And is
all
this
saw
real?
it.
It was. Yeah, and even when I play the bowls, especially if we're doing live streams. So the bowls, because they're made out of quartz crystal,
Mhm.
99.999% pure quartz. Quartz is a piezo crystal, so it has the piezoelectric effect comes into play. It's a function
Awesome.
of how silica and oxygen come together when there's compression that happens on that quartz, and it generates, or that crystal, and it generates electricity or movement, voltage, and you can physically feel And this is not just me. You'll feel the energy of the room shift whenever there are people in the room and we go to start working. We set an intention towards this is where we're focused today. And you can viscerally feel the energy in the room shift when things are coming more to a head, and then when they release. The other day I was playing a certain series of bowls and I was sitting there marveling. This was actually one of the times I was playing one of the archangels. I was actually playing Archangel Uriel and or Uriel.
Uriel,
Depends on
thank
where
you.
you're from. Tomato, tomato. Yeah, so Uriel, I was playing, I was listening to him and I sat there and I was not the one playing. I was not thinking. There was no planning. It was literally just being led and guided. And I'm witnessing the hair on my arms as it's moving over the bowl, literally standing up. And I thought, it's very fascinating because it was the electricity that was being stimulated out of this bowl. It was not an emotional response I was having. It was not mumbo jumbo woo woo. It was like straight up just pure legit physical science happening with voltage, right?
That's amazing.
But what stimulated that too? Because I was doing the same thing on other bowls moments before, even applying more pressure. Why was it in this moment that energy was really kicking? There's a lot of interesting things that are still yet to be discovered and understood.
Awesome. Very cool. All right. So we have your events, which is awesome. Can you give us the title of the planet thing? A planet album again?
Aligned, a planetary mantra and gong shower. So you can actually listen to Aligned. You can listen to it on Spotify, but if you really want the benefits of the frequencies, you have to get it on our website. So our website, you can get it for sale on the website, but and that's because the way that Spotify and a lot of the other digital delivery systems,
I know what you're going to say. Go ahead.
Yeah, the compression of the files, it really shifts aspects of the overtones. We find that it's less efficacious whenever when you're listening off of the online system. But sometimes people just want to put it on and like study in the background, and they're not really interested in like, I don't need to realign myself. I don't need to bring in the frequencies of Venus. I don't need to bring in the luck and the abundance of Jupiter. Like, just leave me alone. I just want to study. Like that's one of the reasons we left it up on Spotify for that. So,
gotcha.
But otherwise, if you want the fullness of the frequencies, you can go to the website, which is just Charleene.com.
One more time.
Charleene.com.
Charleene.com.
Yeah.
And I'll put that up so everyone sees it and stuff. Now, you said you have a film project coming out.
Yeah, we're part of the first official and authorized documentary of William Faulkner, who was a Southern writer. And it's a beautiful docudrama talking about diving into this aspect of race relations. You know, Faulkner was a leader at the time, and of really, he was the first writer to actually give a Black character their story, of them telling the story, first author to do it. And so he was very groundbreaking, both professionally as well as personally, in the race relations in antebellum South. So, but interesting now how culture, some folks in our culture want to cancel Faulkner, and yet the reality is that
really,
yeah. So it's a very interesting discourse, and it's a very cool film. It's called "The Past Is Never Dead," which stems from a beautiful quote from William Faulkner. So
it's amazing. I like it. Or I'm writing it down. That's why I'm silent.
Yeah.
All right. So we got that coming up. We have the events in November and December coming up. And we have a website if you want to get the entire lineup of everything Charleene, which is at charleene.com. We'll put that up as well. .com, correct?
.com, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Unless you have anything to add, I think we'll wrap it up.
It's so beautiful to be with you, to reconnect with you, and also to connect with your awesome viewers and audience. It's always a joy, and I just love your energy, Tim. I appreciate all that you have created and all of those that you attract, and it's so nice to meet you all now for the first time, and of course, so good to see you again, my friend.
Good to see you too, Shirley. And Jeremy, I know you're there in the background somewhere.
He's waving.
Excellent. Oh man, I
Oh,
miss
God
you
bless him.
guys a
Where would I
lot.
be
What?
without my husband? Good partnership.
Excellent. So, my Charlene, thank you so much for being on the show. You've given us a whole bunch to not only think about but to listen to, and I and I do encourage you to check out Charlene's stuff. She actually, like I said, I went into this completely blank, and I listened to her stuff. It's like, oh yeah, I get it. That's awesome. And ever since then, I've been actually researching sound science as a healing modality. And so I'm happy to talk with you about all that fun stuff. I thank you once again for being on the show, and we will talk soon, I hope.
I'll look forward to it. And until
Okay,
then, be well.
you too.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Tim Sudano. This has been Paranormal Insight. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving. Here's a quick word from our sponsors. The Seekers of California for Ethereal Research and Investigation. We investigate hauntings, cryptids, UFOs, and offer cleansing and clearing. Don't get scared, call Scary. Serving the greater San Jose area and beyond. Call us at 408-320-8467. That's 408-320-8467. Scary Paranormal Investigations.
Symbol, the trident, gifted to us by the priests of Troy Xenos centuries ago when one of the first monster hunting teams out of Corinth battled a contingent of Vrykolakas that had infested their temple. After the victory over the monsters, the head priest declared, "You are three lances acting as one, not unlike Poseidon's mighty trident of light. That would become our name, the Trident of Light, for the good we did, and still do, against the dark evils of this world."
Available at Amazon Books. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that's Charleene Closshey in a nutshell. Funny, informative, and informed. And as I said before, a Renaissance woman. I'm still amazed by her, even a year after that interview. So, what did we learn? Well, we learned that there's an alternative therapy um, using cymatics and all that fun stuff. And in more recent history, a few months since this originally aired and was recorded, we have seen tumors destroyed and cancer clusters obliterated by the use of sonic application. It occurs to me that maybe we are about to experience a revelation when it comes to not only the science of this, sonic physics, but perhaps a medical revelation as well. And it gives people like me, I have diabetes, and I use sonic therapy, and my A1C is down because of it. So now one may argue that it's me making myself better because I believe that the sound is working. Well, then there's the flip side of it, that the sound is working. Those frequencies that I'm using are helping. And you don't need a real super expensive speaker bed like some folks have. You can use your headphones, tap that vagal nerve, and help yourself out. Fascinating. Well, I guess that's all for me for now. I want to wish you well. Happy Thanksgiving, of course, for those who celebrate. And until next time, my name is Tim Sudano, and this is a weird shadow on my face. This is Paranormal Insight. Good night. If you have a paranormal experience that you would like to discuss on the show, please email us at paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com. That's paranormal.insight.podcast@gmail.com.